Today is the 13th day of June, Sabbath in the Bahamas, Saturday the 13th. And Kai Mills has been noticeably quiet. Not always is my time to speak, but when it is my time to speak, I shall do so without fear or favor. But I was waiting on my loving cousin, my high school classmate, my member of parliament for North Abaco, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Darren Henfield, to speak, because he also has had 9 months of absolute silence in the worst time in the history of Abaco and Abaconians. So I was waiting on Darren to make his big debut in House Assembly and see what he got in store for North Abaco. Boy, did he make the most of the spotlight. International world was watching. Abaco, for most incidents, weren't watching in Central Abaco because we most of us, 90%, don't have no television, no radio, no access to newspaper. So news here doesn't mean that you get news in Abaco. We don't know anything of what's going on. But I got the paper right here. Big new housing and community center being planned for not Darren community of North Abaco, but Central Abaco. Wow. Boy, he really know how to play the game. I know everybody in Abaco was saying, woo-wee, wowie, man. You see, North Abaco is where I got the most damage in Darren constituency. Spring City, where he's proposing to put his community center, had power for 6 months now. Out in Lake City is out in the boomies. This ain't no time to try to build a new town, Darren. This is a time to rebuild your town, your island, your community. Not going out in the bushes in Lake City and starting something. But you only knew that and would know that if you live and come amongst us. You may give us bread. All we want is water. Your bread don't make no difference. That's what you're proposing right here. Darren, who in North Abaco or Abaco proper have you sit down to the table with and ask, is this is what we need at this time? You're representing a people. And if you don't speak to your people, how could you speak for North Abaco and you haven't sat down with us in 9 months and you're getting monies for office to be open and all kind of monies on behalf of Abaco? That is unacceptable. And Darren said he's getting $1 million from the Indians, and they still don't know when this project's going to be start, although they already got $1 million. 9 months in, hurricane season is already here. We have already had 3 named storms, and you are still talking to the Indians, although you had the money from September. He said he had this money from September. This 9 months in, according to the newspaper. But one of the most interesting thing Darren said, I gotta read there, from the International Organization of Migrants, found that there is insufficient shelter capacity on Abaco. Darren, you ain't ashamed when you read that? We had to get the Organization of Migrant State to tell you that there's not enough hurricane shelters on Abaco. Shouldn't you know this stuff as our MP? Why does somebody got to come from out of state to tell you? This is your district. They should be asking you, not telling you that we don't have enough hurricane shelters. We don't have any government shelter. We have never had any proper government shelter in the history of Abaco. Only one place that I know, one community that they built a hurricane shelter for in my lifetime. That's in Sandy Point, Abaco, because they recognized that they were vulnerable to the seas on both sides. And if Hurricane Dorian would have hit Sandy Point, that would have been a lost city. There is not a person would have been alive to date, I don't believe. And Sandy Point may disagree with me. All y'all that got hard hair but don't want to move, every brute and bugger would have been dead in Sandy Point to date. Trust Kai Mills on that. But their shelter is a little further, but that shelter couldn't withstand Hurricane Dorian. If you don't believe me, go by Shell, Rubus, and K&S and see how the steel got bent in Hurricane Dorian. Didn't have no respect for steel. If the steel weren't put down right, they bent that. But my MP is trying to build something that is not a necessity at this time, and where he's building it is definitely not the place to build it. But this happens when you don't sit down with your people. All I want North Abaco to remember, and this is how you pay and repay this uncaring F&M government and Minister of Foreign Affairs in Darren Henfield for their heartlessness, their soulness, and don't have no concern for North Abaco. You repay them at the poll, but making sure that Darren and the F&M, when we go to the poll, get beat by thousands of votes. We in North Abaco want to send a resounding message to the world, and indeed these F&M cronies, that is unacceptable the way they have treated us after hurricane. Before the hurricane, the Prime Minister had the power to bring planes and to bring our people out of the eye of a deadly storm. He did that. He did not do that. I hold him completely responsible for every death. Everybody that died in Hurricane Dorian is on the foot of the most honorable Prime Minister, a gynecologist turned Prime Minister, the most honorable Dr. Hubert Minnis. He's responsible for every death. And we see the record. Even after thousands of persons have died, they still refuse to tell us the numbers when they know the numbers. Neither do they want to give us the name. They are hiding the truth from the people. When we go at the polls, we want to remember how they kept our dead for 9 months. We want to remember after 9 months how they throw them in a hole like animals. We want to remember that our Prime Minister refused, because of his conscience, him nor the Deputy Prime Minister refused to come to a state funeral, what happened to be the darkest chapter in the history of the modern Bahamas. We want to remember when we go at the polls that as of to date, they haven't fixed any homes. We want to remember as of the date to understand that the polls are still not up in Dundastan. We want to remember as of the date that there's lights on every other pole, Murphytown, Back and Front Street, and Mashaba. We want to remember that as of the 13th day of June, there is no lights at all on the poles of Dundastan. This is the township that Darren grew up in. This is the township that the Henfield family is still living in. Water, in some instances. I just got water last week. Most people don't have water yet in Dundastan. The poles are not up. That means there is no wires to the pole. And there is no electricity. So we remember this at the polls when we make sure that he gets under 100 votes and Kai Mills get in the thousands. That is how you repay this uncaring government. You pay them at the poll. It's one of these Kai Care video while they're in trying to make a city in Lake City and Baca Spring City and Dundastan proper can't even put up the poles. He got $1 million to build his sanctuary in Spring City and Lake City, and Dundastan, his biggest constituency of Dundas, Murphy, and Central, can supply material to help people to rebuild. Some going on 10 months later. You go in Spring City and have your little campfire and your little building. We'll remember you there in Enfield and this weightless, no good FNM government at the polls. Kai Case wishing and hoping that election would have been called this week so we could rid ourselves of this dark chapter in our lives in the Bahamas called the FNM government. And this prime minister that has caused more hardship to this country, Dr. Hubert Minnis. We are ready and willing and able to rid this country of this long, long nightmare called the FNM government. Kai Case, I'll see you at the polls. I will be there. Hope that you'll be there.